Hello everyone, hello everyone. How are you all doing? I hope you are well wherever you are. All right, so this is Benjamin. Today I am here to present our revolutionary application. It is still work in progress or work in process, but as it is now actually um, it's actually usable, especially for academic purposes, for training purposes. It's already actually good to go. But we still have got plans to actually make it a fully fledged application. Now, um, so I want to first of all um, give thanks to Best 44 because that is the website, or rather the company. Yeah, no, the website. I know it was bought by Wix. So yeah, I would like to extend my gratitude to Best 44 for enabling people like us. And when I say us, I mean people without the coding know-how. So this app that you are seeing, it was not done by an IT person. It was actually done by um, business, persons who are actually into risk management. So all we had was the knowledge and the know-how of what we want to do. But traditionally, we would have to we would have paid an IT guy, um, or an IT professional, tell him or tell her what we want, and then they will design this. But now, with the rise of AI, there are so many companies that are out there, but we prefer Best 44 for our own personal reasons. So on Best 44 and many other service providers out there, they use what is called vibe coding, where you simply go there, you actually type what you want, and then AI does it for you. But it's not as easy as it's not as easy as that, because remember, for you to come up with something like this, you need to know exactly what you want. Like it's not like you give an IT guy just a rough overview, and then they'll go and do the add-ons using their own expertise. With this, now you are the IT guy, and you are as well as the risk manager with the framework. So it's more like it's two in one. you know so we actually coded using words, like do an app that is 1 2 3 what, and then we have this. So as you can see, is actually a very comprehensive app with 5 components, right? So this is component number 1, the variance analysis. And then each component here has got an input field, which is this one, you see. So I can type here, and once I type, this changes to blue to show that I can enter, right? Then there is the description of the component variance analysis. There is the benchmark. Okay, I'll go into detail later, but for now, I just want you to see how detailed it is. So there is the component number 2, communication. Component number 3, objective setting. Component number 4, uncertainty assessment. Component number 5, uncertainty treatment, right? So now, and then of course, the last one, phase achieved. Okay, so these are the inputs. That is the input a panel or a space. Then we now go to the output space. Now, as you can see there, so 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 the magic of you know of all this thing is, at the beginning all we had was this drawing, not exactly as is, no, but yeah, we had a drawing that is more or less like this, with three big circles and five small circles around each big circle, numbered 1 to 5. So, and then we had the idea of how the framework should work. So we had now to practicalize it step by step, and you'll see the magic of what we have done here. So this is the output, where you can now see the color. So as you can see now, currently there's only one active circle, which is the survival, because as you can see under the legend there, if it's gray, it means it's inactive, right? So that means currently only the survival, you know, phase is active. That's why it's red. But anyway, um, I just wanted you to see the details that have gone into developing this app. So it's not something that we have just done for fun or no, but it is something that we've done to make a difference, in our communities, to make a difference in our nations, to make a to make a difference in our continent, and of course in the world at large. So when I say we, who are the we? So it's myself and a professor specializing in risk management, or yeah, or who wants specialize in risk management um, at some point. That's how actually I met, you know, the professor back then, and then yeah. So let me just give you a background of the brains behind this. Then you will appreciate what we have designed for you. So I'll start with myself, because of course I'm the least of the duo, or the partnership. So as I've said earlier on, my name is Benjamin, but many people, they know me as Bruce Taona Masama. So at 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 university level, I did a master's degree in in internal auditing, right? But focusing on risk management. So um, um, when I did my master's, I did my thesis on the utilization of enterprise risk management in small, medium, and micro enterprises. And this was in South Africa, Cape Town to be precise. So I have, this love for small businesses, because it is these small beginnings, that results in all this glamour that we see, um, um, you know, in the world. They all started small, as we see from life itself. You go and plant one seed, it will germinate, grow to be a big plant or a big tree, and then from that one seed, you can now have 40, 40 mangoes, or 40 oranges, just from that one seed. So I'm really attached, I'm really in love with small businesses. And the professor, unfortunately, I cannot mention the name, because I have not asked it for permission prior to the recording of this public recording. But of course, in due course, you will get to know, the identity of the professor. So the professor developed a risk management framework specifically for small businesses. So now you can see that we are two people with the love for small beginnings, right? So during our research studies and afterwards, we actually realized something, and that we actually wanted to address. And that something is the gap. So we realize that, and this realization also came from reviewing other studies, from friends, colleagues, and other academics as well in our field. So you see that those who know self-employed people, like their profiles, if someone is self-employed, you know, um, in most cases they are not self-employed by choice. That's number one. They're actually being forced by circumstances. If you look at many African countries, especially um, at the present moment, most participants in the informal sector, they are not there by choice. They are being pushed, either because of retrenchment or um, inadequate job opportunities and etc. etc. But the nutshell is these um, business, uh, these small business owners, or these self-employed people, they are actually being engaged in what we call survivalist um, enterprises. So they are not in business to grow it. No, no, no. They are simply there to survive. Pay rent, get money for food, pay for fees and stuff. So now what we did now is we actually zoomed in and see how can we actually impact, how can we help them, whether you are starting a business to survive or you have got growth mindset. Either way, you need to get help, you need to deal with risk. But before we focus on the on the app, because I've just mentioned the word risk, but then it's not even on my screen. So you ask, hey, but then what are you talking about? I mean, I am talking about those people who are not familiar with the field of risk management. Now I will take you to this tab, and this, you know, I have to confess something. When I did my masters, I realized something. Yes, they were definitions which were actually very good. And I also conceptualized my own definition for risk. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was it was the possibility of a threat or opportunity materializing, and what. Yeah. So it's quite a long paragraph, but with simple English. But still, um, I just felt that we needed something short. You see, because now if you take someone who did arts, you know, like history, Shona, uh, divinity. Now I'm just giving examples of a combination in Zimbabwe, right? And then you give that person, so let's say that person now, he has got a law firm, right? And then you want to explain to them what is risk. The moment they see that 5-line paragraph, then they actually become intimidated. And then they'll say, this risk management thing is daunting. So we actually didn't want that, you know. So, but when I saw the redefinition of the term risk by ISO, which actually stands for International Organization for Standardization, if I'm not mistaken, right? So when I saw this definition, I'm like, wow, at least we are now getting somewhere. Because now, um, also, apart from the long definitions, there's this thing of different professionals calling the same thing in different ways, which causes confusion, right? So now the new definition is now the effect of uncertainty on objectives, right? The effect. But again, if we read this definition, right, with what can I say? If we read this definition with with, with, with um, without a prior understanding of risk management, you know, okay, the effect, once we read the effect, my mind registers positive or negative, okay, fine, of uncertainty, all right, um, on objectives. So now already my mind is now focused on just one thing. Is it positive? Is it negative? But then I am missing something, you know. But now those who have done risk management, they will now know that, oh, okay, no, 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 no. Firstly, we need to talk about the sources of uncertainty, right? But then the definition itself does not really, I mean, it needs further exploration for someone to actually understand where to start and where to end, right? So um, we wanted a definition that is more general, that is more broad, that will allow all these other mini definitions to fit in. What am I saying? If you go to statistics right now, the definition of risk is more inclined or is more related to probability, right? The probability of a negative event happening. The last time I checked my literature, that was more or less the definition of risk in the field of, or in the profession of statistics. So many fields, they regard risk as negative, right? So, and also this word risk, it what can I say? People, they regard it as something for a specific profession, or for a specific people. But guess what? During our literature uh, review, or during our studies, we actually realized that risk is inherent. I mean, every risk, a researcher most likely have used this statement in one way or the other. Risk is inherent in everyday life. What are we saying? We are saying risk is everywhere. You know, um, Actually, I remember writing a paper recently, eh, and I the title was "We Are All Betting," and the essence of that paper was life is full of uncertainty. So, um, using that as our point of departure, we further refined the definition of risk to be inclusive, and to be accommodating, to accommodate everyone, every profession. Why? Because we want to filter it down, not to tertiary, to university, but to primary level. Now, why? Because every citizen, whether you are into business, whether you are an employee of a company, we all need to be good um, risk, or rather uncertainty managers. And you will actually understand where I'm coming from when I start to explain um, how individuals can apply this framework, or this flower of ours, right? So um, let me go back to our flower, right? So the word universal, it means this framework or this model, but I don't want to use those terms. Why? Because once I say framework and model, I'm now sounding more like, a risk management professional. And now a grade 4 learner thing, now that's not for me. Or someone or a graduate from the marketing discipline thing, no, that's not for me. Risk management framework, no, that's not for me. No, no, no. So universal, right? What are we talking about? We are saying it is universal because everyone, and I repeat, everyone, whether you are into finance, whether you are into HR, whether you are into law, we all need to be good uncertainty managers. Only the scope differs, because someone is an uncertainty manager at personal level, like you are only focusing on your life. Someone is doing it for a family, right? And someone is doing it for a community. Someone is doing it for a city, and someone is doing it for a country, right? And someone is doing it for the continent. It all depends with the extent to which you are an uncertainty manager. But we are all uncertainty managers, of one sort or another. So that's where the word universal comes from. So this flower, so from now onwards, I'll use the term flower to represent model or uh, framework. So flower, everyone loves. Okay, not everyone, but almost everyone loves nature, flowers, right? Either a rose or a flower with those open petals. So ours is a flower because if we look at this visual panel there, so there is our flower there, and our flower has three petals. Now, one petal is called a survival, and if you want, you can just stay there and keep that petal, without coloring anything. So if you want, you stay here. But guess what? It's actually inevitable. You have to go to the next level. Why? Because by nature, once you plant a seed, by nature, if it rains, it must germinate. By nature, if it germinates, it must grow. By nature, if it grows, it must be productive. By nature, it must be sustainable. I mean, that is nature. Where I stay now, it's only that anyway, it's dark one, and also I'm using a screen recorder, so I can't use the camera. But anyway, I'll just explain. There's a tree here. There's a tree, a mango tree that was there before I was born, right? And that mango tree is still there now. So, and we're actually eating fruits very soon in December. We will be actually eating mango fruits from that tree. So, what is that? That's an example. That's a perfect illustration of sustainability, because that mango tree has been enjoyed, or he has nourished many generations. I mean, I'm I'm now 38 years old, right? But this tree was there before I was born. So you can imagine how many generations actually enjoyed those fruits. So that is what we call sustainability. So nature, you know, uh, 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 um, um, it actually evolves around those three things. But with us as humans, we have got choices to either stay at one point at survival stage, or we go to productivity stage, or we go from being in the survival mode to being productive, or we can even go to being sustainable, right? So now, so this is where the flower name comes from, because once all three are activated, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do that in this session now, because now, since there are quite a lot of things to be done here, it might not allow me to actually get to the last part. But anyway, I'll simply explain once I've done one or two things, right? So this is where um, uh, the flower part, comes from. Okay, so there are three petals, and as you can see there from the legend, the silver one is red, the the productivity one is green, and the sustainability one is yellow. So that's a flower, right? So now let's go back to the name. So I have touched on universal. I've already touched on the last word, which is flower, and then obviously let us go to um, the second word, which is uncertainty, which we all know about. In life, the only thing that is okay, not the only thing, but the most common thing that is guaranteed in life is death. Being born is not even guaranteed, because after after um after fertilization and the development of is it an embryo, or yeah, and then later, sorry, and then later a fetus, and then a baby. Being born alive is not even guaranteed. It's not even a guarantee. So there are actually uncertainties. But once you are born and you are breathing, there's only one thing that becomes guaranteed, that is death, right? Of course, there are those that believe that Earth will actually be transformed into eternity before others see death. This is not the subject of that recording. I wish it was, but unfortunately, it is not. So the general consensus that we have as a world, before we even put our religious beliefs in, is that death is certain. So uncertainty comes from the word certain. Certain means guaranteed. One day you will say, this guy who recorded this recording, he's dead. He died 2 years ago, or he died last month, because death is guaranteed, right? But anything that is not guaranteed is called uncertain. This thing is uncertain, and it becomes an uncertainty. Like, e.g., getting a job after a after getting your PhD degree is not guaranteed. The probability is high, yes, but it is not guaranteed. Okay, so that is uncertainty. And then, of course, management. So I'll just simplify that. We are trying to reduce, or we are trying to deal with the uncertainty part. So we are trying to move from being uncertain to being certain. Either certain in the sense that it will not happen definitely, or certain in the sense that it will not impact me definitely. I'll give you an example. People join funeral policies, right, because they know that they'll die, but then they don't want their death to impact their families negatively. See, because since we don't know when we are going to die, there is an uncertainty with regards to will they afford the burial or not. So to avoid that, we now join a funeral policy, pay $5 a month, we pay $10 a month, we pay 100 rands a month, and etc. We actually trying to create a certainty. Actually, we are not trying to, we're actually creating a certainty. Of course, it all depends with the company that you, because if you subscribe with a new company, then still it's not certain, because they might just close doors before you die. So yeah, assuming that you have got a policy with a reputable company, right? You have actually created a certainty with regards to affording your burial and etc, right? So this flower is applicable to every person who wants, every person who is now aware of the need to grow or develop, right? So maybe as grade R, or or probably, yeah, as early as 3-4 years there, this framework is already applicable. But of course, at that age, one cannot actually independently enter figures in there, but the guardians can actually use this framework to actually uh, make it happen, because our aim is actually to introduce this from as early as grade zero. That's what we normally used to call our preschool, and here in Zim we call it ECDA, right? So this framework, it can be unpacked, so that it can be introduced in a staggered approach. Okay, right. So without wasting time, I don't want this recording to be that long, right? Initially, I wanted to go for 30 minutes, but I can see my time there now that most likely I might not be able to. So probably the maximum that I'll probably take is 45 minutes, which is the same as a lecture, one lecture period that I used to, cover when I was still a lecturer at university level. Our one period was 45 minutes. So after 45 minutes, that would be one period, and I can end there. Right. So please don't sleep. We are still in class. All right. So we can unpack this flower. So let's come here. When a child is born, they don't care about being productive. Anyway, let's define this. Let's conceptualize this. I know almost everyone knows what is survival, what is productive, and what is sustainability, but we want to conceptualize them according to our app, or according to our flower. Now, survival, since we're going to start at individual level, so it depends. Are we looking at a company, or are we looking at an individual? Right? So if we are looking at an individual, survival, we simplified it to meaning just worrying about today. That is survival. So if you are in the survival mode, you are only focused on, see, when you sleep, you are as good as dead, right? Then when you wake up, now that's your concern. What am I going to eat today morning? What am I going to eat at breakfast? What am I going to eat at supper? Now that's your concern, right? And how am I going to go to work today? But for now, the work part actually is not there. For now, the work part is not even involved in the survival stage. You are still just thinking about today. Now, this is where most kids are, most dependents are. Because when a child comes from school, they will tell you, Mommy, I am hungry. Daddy, I'm hungry. Grandpa, I'm hungry. So they are only thinking about survival. Why? Because they know that if they don't eat, they'll die, right? So, and when they eat, some, they don't even think about supper. So let's say they are given food enough for 2 meals, right? They'll eat it as if there's no tomorrow, or there's no next meal, right? In Shona, I just remembered this. I just remembered this. This saying in Shona. I have to say it. It says "Kuriza ngoma nedemo." So, kuriza ngoma is like you are beating a drum using an axe. So, we all know that most drum beaters, especially in Africa, they use hands, right? But then if you're using an axe, that means um, you are actually damaging that skin that's on top of your drum. So if you play your drum using an axe, it means you cannot even play it twice or thrice, because once you hit it the first time, you now break, that layer on top, right? So if you are playing a drum using an axe, actually I've used the literal translation from Shona to English, right? So it simply means you are not thinking about tomorrow. That's where kids are. You see, that's where kids are. They only think about now. From a baby, right? They only cry when they want milk. They only cry when they want to be changed the diaper. They cry when they want pap. You see, they you see, even if there's no food in the house, when they cry, right, they are not crying to say, what will I eat tomorrow? No, no, no. They'll cry and say, I'm hungry now. That is the survival stage, right? And as a child grows up, okay, they will now get to learn to reserve for, tomorrow. They reserve for the next meal. Now they are starting to be leaning towards the productivity phase. So at at individual level, right, uh, or at natural person level, survival simply means thinking about the present. And the present, normally, we actually extend it to mean a day. So when you wake up, that day becomes your present, even if the next minute is actually part of future. But anyway, we'll just classify it broadly as present, because you are going to be awake the whole day. That is, if God allows you. When you sleep, that's when you die. Okay, not literally, but yeah. So that's when you die. So a cycle is gone. Then when you wake up tomorrow again, you worry about tomorrow. So that is survival. Then it will come a point where you are no longer on survival mode, but you now want to go to productivity, right? So if we use the context of learners, right, why do learners go to school? Or why do children go to school? Is because one day they want to be productive. So what do we mean by productive? So in our app, or in our flower, being productive is being able to cater for at least 2 days. So today is your present and tomorrow is your future. So once you're able to cater for 2 days, you are productive, but of course to a certain extent. If you can cater for 3 days, for 1 week, for 1 month, we are all productive. It's more like this. At school, especially at university level, if you have got 75%, they'll say pass with distinction. Then if you have got 100%, they'll say pass with distinction. You see, so both of them are passes with distinction, but one is like perfect score, and then the other one is actually the minimum, mark to get a distinction. So the same applies to our conceptualized understanding of sustainability. It actually starts from tomorrow until the day that you die. That is all part of productivity. It starts from today, from tomorrow until the day that you will die, right? You are being productive. So if someone caters for only tomorrow, they are productive. If you cater for the next 20 years, you are productive. If you've got a pension fund, you are already productive because you have catered for the future years after you have retired. But all that ends when you die. But not always. Okay, not always. In some cases, when you die, what you have been working for or what you have been gathering now goes to your descendants. Now that is now sustainability. So sustainability is whereby you actually consider, your descendants, starting from your children, their children, which are your grandchildren, and grand, and many generations to come. Right? I'll give you a very perfect example. When a civil servant is working, right, a certain amount is deducted and it goes towards pension fund. When that person retires, they continue earning, right? When the person dies, right, the dependents starting from the spouse and the kids who are under 18, they continue benefiting. Now, that continued benefit now is now sustainability as far as the civil servant is concerned. Okay, so now, don't worry, if I exceed 45 minutes, I've got a right to go to 1 hour 30 because normally at university, in 45 minutes, you actually can't teach anything, but you need two periods, which is called a double period, right? So if I exceed 45 minutes, if you're tired, you can just pause and then come back later. But yeah, because I'm seeing that my time is almost up there, but actually I haven't started to do anything. All right. Okay, so let's get into the basics. Let's see if I can do magic to at least finish um, within 45 minutes. Otherwise, I will have to extend it to 1 hour 30 minutes. All right. So let's start from a child who let's start from a child who is studying. Right. So in the context of education, let's go there. In the context of education, right? Survival is you only worry about today. You wake up, you go to school, you hear what the teacher is teaching today, you write the notes for today, and that's it. You close the books, right? And then tomorrow again, you go for that day, you get the notes. Now that is survival mode in the context of education. But the moment you start reading for a test, you're already being productive. So this does not apply only to money or to economic or to finance. It applies to almost everything in life. Everything. It applies to everything, right? Or rather to not probably everything might not be the right word, but let's say anything that you might want to fit in there, you can find a way to actually fit it in there. So I will give an example. I've got a son here and a daughter. They're doing grade 3, and recently they finished their exams. And I would a day before their maths exam, or a few days before, we would sit down and revise. What is that? They were now being productive, you see, because they were now preparing for the future, right? That is a test tomorrow. And remember, they were not even guaranteed that they'll wake up alive and write the test. That's why we call it the future, right? So that is being productive, right? So the moment you now start to do something for tomorrow, you're already being productive. Okay, all right. So so let's take an instance, a grade 3 learner, okay? But of course, they cannot do this without a guidance of someone who understands. So so here the variance could be so with regards to a test, right? So variance simply means the difference between the present reality and an expected future reality. That is the variance, right? So I'll try to simplify it. But with regards to this app, the way we have done it now, if you make a mistake somewhere else here, your results might actually be flawed, and the app might actually give you, an incorrect assessment. But anyway, let's just say the variance is let's say currently. Okay, let's try to make it short. Haven't written or haven't passed. Yeah. I have not passed the test yet. Okay. I have not passed maths test. Okay. Um, so I've not passed maths test. Why? Because of course I have not written it. Okay, but then I would like to pass it. Okay, I would like to pass it tomorrow. I would like to pass it tomorrow. So this is the variance. Variance simply means the difference between the present and the future desired outcome. Of course, it depends with the field. In cost and management accounting, they've got their own definition, but the bottom line is variance simply means difference. All these things of budgeted and whatever, now that is in, in context to a specific field, but overall, variance means difference. So in this case, the difference is this child has not passed maths test yet because obviously the test here has not been written, but would like to pass it tomorrow. So now the difference is um the need to pass that test. That gap is the difference, or rather it is the variance. So before we actually press enter, actually I should have started with the description and the benchmark before I entered that stuff. But here, don't press enter, because if you press enter here, let's just do it. If you press enter here, right, it's now evaluating. Okay, it now gives you a 0% there, because it's now saying this component cannot be activated because there's no description and there's no benchmark. Okay, so now we need to now describe. Okay, so let's just say enter a difference between present reality and expected future reality. I'm trying to use basic English, which might not be academically correct, but at least you can get the sense. So enter difference or enter variance between present reality, not writing the test, and expected future reality, wanting to pass the test. Okay. So oh, so actually my variance is not complete, but anyway, I will come back there. So the benchmark, you are now telling AI to actually use certain criteria to actually check if that variance is correctly captured. For instance, you can say the plan of action, the plan of action, right, should, or rather must, the plan of action must include a minimum pass mark, or rather should include a minimum mark. Okay, so let's see if it will work. Here, you have not passed maths test. I would like to pass it tomorrow. So here you are simply describing, but then you now need to now put the plan of action. Okay, so the plan of action, okay, is to pass the test tomorrow with 60%. Sorry. Let me just end here first. Let me just end here first. Okay. Pass the test tomorrow. So if this app is working correctly, right? This component cannot be activated. Why? Because the information entered under variance does not include a minimum mark. So if I enter now and AI activates this component, then I know that I have to go and correct the coding. Okay, so let's see. Enter. You see now. There you go. Brilliant, right? So again, the component is not activated. Why? Let's see the reason. The user's input does not meet the benchmark criteria as it lacks a specific minimum mark if in the plan of action. So everything is there. The plan of action is there. The difference is there. But now AI was told, to say the plan of action must include a minimum mark, right? So now imagine you are a parent and you are teaching your child to actually set goals. Okay, so once a child gets this zero, it now means the child now will now be, will now be guided towards, making smart goals. So remember, smart goals must be specific. So S is for specific. Now this goal is not specific because the plan of action is to pass the test tomorrow. You see, pass. Yes, we all know that pass starts from 50% in many institutions. However, in some institutions, pass might be 70%. So you need to be specific. Or what I call pass might not be your pass. So again, we need to be specific. All right. So now let's see. Let's correct what AI let's see here. I go to assistance and then I say, how can I correct this? How can I correct this? Okay. So we ask AI to help us because AI is our friend. So let's see. Okay, so now this is now this is a long is it a answer to improve your maths test performance by tomorrow, right? Consider the following strategies: identify key topics, what. But when I was actually asking how can I correct this, so now this way now I was saying how you or what you type actually determines um determines the response that you get. Although I didn't get the response that I was looking for, but still the answers that I have here, you can see now that they are very, they're very helpful for a child who is practicing. Identify key topics, practice under timed conditions, right? Review mistakes, ensure adequate rest, stay calm and confident, right? So these are just general, practices that a child can implement. But this is not what I wanted. So let me see if I can ask differently. How can I activate? How can I activate a component? Component, or how can I activate component one? Let's see how it answers. There you go. There you go. There you go. So now to activate component one, variance analysis in the productivity phase, follow these steps. 1. Set a minimum passing mark. Then it now says determine the minimum score required to pass the maths test. For example, if the passing mark is 80, calculate the variance, subtract your current score. So now this is now going in detail. Now this will apply to a continuous assessment, right? This applies to a continuous assessment, which is perfect. But for a child who is doing grade 3, who is going to write a test tomorrow without any prior marks, only number 1 is relevant. And number 1 says what? Let's see if I can. Number 1 is up to here. There. Up to there. So that's number 1, right? So number 1 says set a minimum pass mark. So that's the one that we need. Okay. So we now come here. We now say the plan of action is to pass the test tomorrow with a minimum mark, okay, with a minimum mark of let's say 65%. Oh, sorry, let's say 75%, because you are a distinction person, right? You are an A student. So let's see. Let's enter. Hey, voila! There you go. And then AI says, the AI feedback finally says adequate, right? And then it now says key elements found. Where are the key elements coming from? From the benchmark that we have actually given it. It now says the plan of action includes a minimum mark. And then let's now see the magic. So as you can see here now, it's now green. It means component 1 has been successfully activated. As you can see there on top there, top right corner, that is 1 out of 5. Now let's go down to the visualization. Let's go to the visualization. There we go. You see now. So unfortunately, I can zoom. I thought I could not zoom. Perfect. Right. I was about to go for 1 hour 30 minutes, but it's fine. I'll just end here. Then I will explain the rest. So as you can see, the survival tab or the survival circle is red, but once you see that green activation, it means you are now working towards productivity, because productivity is the one that has got a color of green. So if we are here at survival, the small circles, they will turn green as an indication that we are now moving towards productivity. So this child studying for tomorrow is now being productive. Right. So now number 1 has been activated. That's why it is green. Okay. So once we activate number 2, okay, and number 3 and number 4. So the more we activate these small circles, this line here, this line that you are seeing, this small green from number, this small green color that is rising from number 3, it will be getting bigger, approaching productivity. Okay. And then the moment we get to the 5th component, once it turns green, it means this line will be fully green and it will be touching the productivity circle. However, the productivity circle, right, in some cases, right, it will need you to enter, okay, it will need you to enter the phase achieved. Okay, so what have you achieved in this phase? So tomorrow, right, tomorrow we are now going to say, okay, I passed the test with 60%. So it will not turn this productivity into green. Why? Because you did not fulfill the productivity goal according to your variance analysis. So this variance analysis sets what you consider as productive. And according to you, getting a 75% is the productivity level that you want. You see, so this circle might not be activated, right? But yet you will still be productive, because once you see this green, it, it means you are already productive, but to a certain extent. So once we activate all the five, and we also put, let's say here, I now get 80%, it means now this circle will now turn green, right? And then um, um, we now move on, right? We now move on. Maybe sustainability could be passing the end of year exam, right? In their grade 3. So productivity is to pass the next test, and sustainability could be to pass the final exam for them to go to the next year. That's more like their death or their exit from grade 3, you know. So yeah, so once you are now done with the passing, then you now start to make other plans to push for passing the final exam, right? And then, so once this productivity circle turns green, right, the small circles around it, they will now turn yellow, because yellow, you are now approaching what? Sustainability. And once this line gets here, this yellow is activated and it's now yellow. And then finally, once it is yellow, these ones turn red because they are now approaching survival. So eventually, we end up with a nice flower, right? Unfortunately, because of time, right, um, um, I cannot, you know, uh, end, or rather, I cannot do the complete thing, okay, because of time, because it's almost an hour now, and I know that once you explain things in class for more than an hour, students, they are no longer listening. So yeah, it's time to end the session. So yeah, this is basically what we have developed for your kids. This is what we have developed for you, as an adult. This is what we have developed for you, as a business person, as as a small business owner. This is what we have developed. This works up until, even in big companies, this can be used maybe to a smaller scale, and you can also modify it slightly to actually suit your needs. So more is coming, but as you can see, in its current form, it's already working, it's already doing wonders. So this is universal uncertainty management flower from myself and Prof, the UUMF. For now is goodbye. And if you are interested in actually getting this app, either to use it to train your child, because every person must be trained to understand these are stages: variance analysis, communication, objective setting, uncertainty assessment, and uncertainty treatment. These 5 components, everyone must automate them by default. And then as you grow to a business, then you now start to have records and stuff. But at natural person individual level, it will be enough to just automate them without actually writing it down or stuff. Although, you might need to write it down at the beginning. So this is it from Benjamin. Looking forward to working with you. If you are interested in it as either as an individual or as an institution or as a business, you just need to either say it in the comment section, or you can send me an email at miracleconsultants@gmail.com. So the spelling for miracle is double R, right? So it's Miracle Consultants without a space, miracleconsultants@gmail.com. If you're interested in this app, then we will actually take you through it, explain to you how it works. So first of all, you tell us what you want to use it for, and then we actually guide you on how to get the best results. So from my side is thank you and take care.